It was the kind of statement that doesn't just spark rumors, it ignites chaos. Out of nowhere, Orlando Brown appeared on a live stream, staring straight into the camera with that unpredictable intensity he's known for, and calmly said the words no one expected to hear. They're infected, all of them, Diddy's parties. You think it's just fun? It's never just fun. The internet froze. Then exploded. Clips from the live stream were instantly ripped, reposted, chopped into shorts and reaction videos. Within hours, #Orlando Brown was trending worldwide, not for a scandal of his own, but for what he claimed others had been hiding. And it wasn't just vague accusations. It was names. Real, known, household names. He said them with no hesitation. Celebrities, musicians, actors, people that millions admire, all allegedly infected from what he called the ritualistic madness happening behind the closed doors of Diddy's infamous parties. At first, no one wanted to believe it. Orlando Brown has a history of wild claims, exaggerated stories, and chaotic energy. But this time was different. The way he spoke. The detail. The confidence. It didn't feel like a meltdown. It felt like a message. A warning. He spoke of infections not just in the physical sense, but spiritual, emotional, psychological. You go in there thinking you're gonna party, he said, and you come out with something you can't name, and can't get rid of. He went quiet after that. The clip ended. But the damage had already been done. The list didn't stay private for long. Though Orlando never repeated the names in public again, the live stream had already been recorded by viewers, and the clip began to spread, frame by frame, word by word, decoded and dissected. And then came the leaks. A screenshot of a notepad list started circulating on Reddit and X. It was simple, just a dozen names in plain text, but the impact was seismic. Famous singers, chart-topping rappers, even a couple of A-list actors. No context. Just names, tied to one claim. They had attended Diddy's secretive, invitation-only parties, and according to Orlando, came back. Changed. Some names were unsurprising to conspiracy theorists who had already speculated for years about the dark side of elite gatherings. But others? Clean-cut icons, long considered untouchable. And now, their fans were asking questions. What followed was digital chaos. Fans flooded old videos and Instagram posts of the listed celebrities, digging through past appearances, looking for signs. Were they sick? Were they speaking in coded messages? Was there ever a moment they hinted at something wrong? Every blink, every shaky interview, every cancelled tour date became a breadcrumb in a growing narrative. Meanwhile, Diddy remained silent. Completely. His social feeds were untouched. His team issued no statement. That silence only poured gasoline on the fire. Because if there was nothing to hide, why not just say it? Orlando, true to form, didn't walk it back. He didn't clarify. He didn't apologize. He simply went offline. Some say it was strategic. Others say he was silenced. But by then, it didn't matter. The story had already mutated. It was no longer just about Orlando Brown. It was about everyone whose name had surfaced, everyone who had ever stepped into those infamous parties, and the one man who threw them all. As the list continued circulating, the internet did what it always does when a rumor feels too close to reality. It began digging. Fans, bloggers, even low-tier journalists began pulling receipts. Old tweets were resurrected. Archived live streams, blurry party photos, and red carpet interviews that once seemed irrelevant now played like puzzle pieces waiting to be locked into place. One fan account compiled over a dozen clips showing the same celebrities named on the leaked list attending various private events, not just parties, but after parties, studio sessions, birthday weekends, all with one constant, Diddy. Some clips were innocent. Others felt different now. There was a particular video from 5 years ago, grainy and awkward, of a well-known R&B singer refusing to answer a question about Diddy's New Year's party. He laughed nervously, adjusted his jacket, and quickly changed the subject. Back then, no one cared. Now, it was framed as a red flag. Then came the first insider. Not a celebrity, a former security contractor who worked events for A-listers in Los Angeles. On a little-known podcast, He shared that he had worked one of Diddy's parties years ago, and described it as controlled chaos, elegant on the surface, sick underneath. Without naming names, he confirmed there were NDAs handed out at the door. Phones sealed. Rooms locked. VIPs escorted behind blackout curtained areas. I've worked Hollywood for 2 decades, he said, and that party haunts me. The internet latched onto it immediately. Headlines popped up. Security confirms creepy details from Diddy party. Was Orlando Brown telling the truth all along? People began connecting his story to what Orlando said about infections, that they weren't always visible. Some believed it was drug-related, others spiritual, even parasitic. The theories turned dark, weird, spiritual. But the one thing no one could deny anymore was this: people were talking. More anonymous sources began posting online. A hairstylist. A driver. An ex-assistant. Some denied ever seeing anything. But some hinted that everything Orlando claimed was just the surface. The story was growing legs, and now even those who once rolled their eyes at Orlando Brown were starting to wonder if he was the only one crazy enough to finally tell the truth. It was only a matter of time before someone on the list broke the silence. And when they did, it wasn't through a publicist or a carefully scripted PR statement. It came suddenly, through an unfiltered, shaky Instagram live, the kind that feels too real to ignore. A well-known rapper whose name had appeared on every version of the leaked list went live at 2:13 a.m. He looked tired. Not just tired, hollow. Like he hadn't slept in days. He stared into the camera for a long moment before speaking. I ain't never liked playing the internet game, he said, voice low. But I see my name out there. I see y'all putting me on lists like I caught something, like I was part of something. He paused, clearly trying to measure how far he was willing to go. I've been to those parties. Yeah. A lot of us have. And most of the time, it's what you expect: music, people, champagne. But sometimes it got weird. Real weird. That's all I must say. The chat went crazy. Comments poured in faster than the feed could handle. People begging for names. Demanding details. But he didn't offer any. Just a long sigh and a quiet, final statement before ending the stream. Orlando ain't lying as much as you think. That one line broke the internet again. Screenshots of the live stream flooded social media. Bloggers wrote entire think pieces around that single sentence. It wasn't a full confirmation, but it wasn't a denial either. And coming from someone who had always stayed out of drama, it hit differently. Now, the list had a voice. A real, recognizable, respected voice, and suddenly the rumors had weight. Journalists who had dismissed the story before were now revisiting it. Other celebrities on the list were either going quiet or deleting comments. Some issued vague, "I don't know what this is about" tweets, trying to distance themselves. But the public wasn't having it. Memes were replaced by threads. Jokes were replaced by evidence. The whole vibe had shifted. This wasn't funny anymore. This was real. And Orlando Brown? He was still silent. No new videos. No responses. But the words he spoke were echoing louder than ever, now carried by the very people he'd supposedly exposed. The denials didn't last long because they weren't working. For every celebrity who tweeted, "Don't believe everything you hear," thousands of fans replied with archived footage, screenshots of party attendance, or old quotes that now sounded eerily suspicious. Public trust had already begun to erode, and silence wasn't saving anyone anymore. That's when the first legal threat hit the news cycle. A high-profile attorney representing one of the celebrities named in the alleged infected list issued a public cease and desist, directed at several social media accounts, threatening lawsuits for defamation. But oddly, not directed at Orlando Brown himself. That only raised more eyebrows. Why go after the accounts posting the list but not the person who started it? Commentators online latched onto that detail fast. Some speculated it was strategic, that legal teams were afraid that targeting Orlando directly might force him to speak more publicly, or worse, drop more information. And maybe that's exactly what they were trying to avoid. Because while the lawyer called the accusations baseless and defamatory, They didn't outright deny that the celebrity had been at the parties. That part was never touched. The legal letters had the opposite effect from what they intended. Instead of shutting people up, they made the public dig deeper. One gossip podcast host received a cease and desist and read it live on air before saying, "If they're threatening to sue me, it's because I said something too close to the truth." That clip alone got over 10 million views. Meanwhile, journalists began to quietly investigate connections between various wellness retreats, rehab visits, and mental health breaks publicly taken by several of the listed celebrities over the past decade. On their own, none of these events raised alarms. But when strung together alongside Orlando Brown's claims, the timeline painted a picture too compelling for audiences to ignore. The list, once dismissed as delusion, now lived in the shadows of every headline, unspoken, unconfirmed, but very much alive. A silent map of secrets that people kept scrolling back to. And Orlando? Still no response. No videos. No interviews. But in every corner of the internet, his voice echoed louder than ever, not because he repeated himself, but because no one else could drown him out. The story could no longer be confined to whispers on social media. It had become a monster, crashing through the walls of mainstream coverage. What began with one unpredictable live stream from Orlando Brown had evolved into a full-blown cultural conversation that legacy media could no longer ignore. Major news outlets, usually cautious when covering celebrity scandals, began airing cautious segments. They never showed the list. They never repeated the specific names. But the tone had changed, and it was clear they were watching closely. Morning news shows brought in crisis PR experts and psychologists to speak broadly about the cost of silence in the entertainment world. Primetime anchors started asking pointed questions. Why are so many celebrities refusing to speak? What kind of events are happening at these private gatherings? Suddenly, the clip wasn't just clickbait, it was news. Corporate brands started reacting quietly but decisively. A high-end fashion label quietly removed campaign images featuring one of the listed celebrities. A record label paused promotion of a major tour. Endorsement deals once considered rock solid were reviewed internally, a PR phrase that often signals the beginning of corporate distancing. None of these companies referenced Orlando Brown or the footage directly. But the timing wasn't lost on anyone. The public saw the pattern, and they were documenting every move. Twitter threads tracked who had unfollowed whom. Instagram users screenshotted every disappearing comment. TikTokers posted daily updates, titling them, "Diddy Party Scandal, Day 14, treating it like an ongoing case." And in the middle of all of it, the silence became louder. Diddy remained the one name with the most weight, and the least response. No video. No statement. No legal threat. Just silence. His team reportedly refused interviews, and insiders claimed he'd gone into lockdown mode, taking meetings behind closed doors and cutting off direct access from longtime associates. But here's what made this moment different: people didn't move on. The internet didn't forget. The story, instead of fading, kept feeding itself. The more silence came from the top, the louder the lower voices became. Former assistants, old collaborators, retired stylists, all posting vague but suggestive messages. "Y'all thought this was new? Finally people are paying attention. He's been protected for too long." Orlando Brown's name had stopped trending, but the storm he created was just beginning to thunder through every layer of entertainment. He wasn't speaking, but his truth was being carried by everyone else. The turning point came when the rumors stopped being rumors, and stepped into the courtroom. Late one night, breaking news headlines flashed across social media timelines like lightning strikes. A civil lawsuit had been officially filed against a high-profile figure associated with the now infamous parties. The plaintiff? A former industry assistant whose name had never appeared in tabloids before. Their allegations were long, detailed, and chilling. The filing didn't just mention Diddy's name, it outlined specific events, locations, dates, and even the names of celebrities present at gatherings that, until now, had only existed in gossip. The lawsuit didn't reference Orlando Brown directly, but the language mirrored everything he had hinted at weeks earlier: the secret invitations, the NDAs, the cameras being taken at the door, the ritualistic nature of some gatherings, and the infections, Not literal diseases, but traumas, scars, and silence that followed the people who walked away from those nights forever changed. The internet reacted instantly. News anchors read direct quotes from the court filing. Podcasts went live mid-episode just to cover it. People who had mocked the story now started tweeting in all caps. Orlando was right. The lawsuit gave weight to every theory, every time-stamped clip, every pause video. And suddenly, what was once fans' speculation became evidence. Other names began to scatter. A singer cancelled their press tour with no explanation. An actor quietly disabled comments across all platforms. A YouTuber known for partying with celebs deleted months of content. It was like the ground beneath Hollywood had shifted, and people were scrambling to distance themselves before more suits dropped. Lawyers, crisis managers, brand reps, all working behind the scenes couldn't stop what was now public record. More filings were rumored to be coming. Anonymous tips were flooding journalists' inboxes. Even law enforcement, according to one verified outlet, had begun reviewing certain party-related incidents, previously deemed private. And still, Orlando Brown said nothing. He didn't need to. Because now, the system he exposed was no longer protecting itself, it was cracking open, piece by piece, under the weight of its own secrets. Now it wasn't just lawsuits, it was war. With the first filing made public and more reportedly on the way, panic began to spread through the entertainment industry, not from the public, but from within. Celebrities who had once shared private jets and VIP booths were now unfollowing each other, deleting photos, and most tellingly making subtle accusations in interviews and cryptic tweets. The silence had shattered, and in its place was a growing storm of betrayal. One Grammy-winning artist tweeted just 2 words. "I warned him." No names. No hashtags. But the replies exploded. Fans instantly guessed who it was about. A former reality star posted a blurry photo of herself at a luxury house party years ago, followed by the caption, "I should have spoken up when it happened to me." These weren't random coincidences. They were warnings, shields, or signals, and the internet treated everyone like a confession. The media, once cautious, now turned on itself. Talk show hosts who had previously cozied up to the accused were being called out for silence. Podcasts that had ignored the story were suddenly running emergency episodes. And journalists who had once mocked Orlando Brown's credibility were now quoting him apologetically. Headlines flipped tone. Orlando Brown wasn't lying. The footage was just the beginning. The walls are closing in. It wasn't about just one man anymore. It was the whole machine. The way powerful people hosted invitation only events, silenced staff with NDAs, surrounded themselves with enablers, and built empires on the backs of secrets. This wasn't just about infections, parties, or scandal. It was about systems, and those systems were unraveling. And still, the original list remained unofficial. Unconfirmed. No one in power would repeat it, but everyone acted like they had read it. Publicists scrambled. Brand reps paused campaigns. Labels started pulling artists from press circuits. The fallout was no longer hypothetical, it was happening, in real time. People who once stood next to Diddy at award shows now avoided saying his name. Celebrities on the list turned their comments off, stopped performing, or posted long, nervous explanations that people shouldn't believe rumors. But the damage was already done. One by one, the dominoes began to fall. Quietly. Brutally. And Orlando Brown? Still vanished. Still silent. But now, his silence wasn't suspicious. It was legendary.